I never thought I'd get a second chance, but the moment I opened my eyes and saw Erickson kneeling in front of me with a cheap bouquet and that same fake sincerity, I realized I'd been sent back to the day he proposed. In my past life, I would have been touched, teary-eyed, ready to toss away my future and dive headfirst into the nightmare he'd prepared for me. And I did. I said yes. I married him, raised a child that wasn't mine, gave up my college admission for him, and spent every ounce of energy trying to heal a man who pretended to forget me the moment I gave birth. Eric faked amnesia just so he could run off with Jasmine Chun, his so-called sister, who turned out to be his secret lover. Together, they tricked me, gaslit me, and humiliated me while I slaved away as their live-in babysitter, believing I was doing it all for love. It wasn't until I overheard them whispering about how I was just a free nanny and how the child I thought was mine had actually been switched at birth that the mask finally dropped. And when I confronted them, they didn't even flinch. They buried me alive. Literally. So now, with the cheap flowers back in my face and his empty words floating in the air, all I could do was stare at him and feel my stomach twist in disgust. I didn't say a word. The crowd around us, clearly entertained, began whispering as Eric shoved the bouquet closer. Jasmine stood by his side, already playing the aggressive girlfriend role, snarling. "What's your problem, Sophia? My brother's proposing to you, and you're acting like you're too good for him? If he didn't want you, no one else would. You'd be left on the shelf." Oh, please. The only shelf I'd ever be on is the one labeled Survivor of the Year, and she could rot in the clearance bin where she belonged. I used to think they were siblings leaning on each other for survival. Turns out she saw me as competition from the start. Eric gave her a warning glare off course, all for show, and said, "Jasmine, stop it. Sophia and I have been together for years. She'll say yes. She knows how much I love her." The people around us ate it up like drama-hungry hyenas. "Wow, what a responsible man," one auntie said. "He just came back from the countryside and immediately proposed. Girls these days dream of this kind of security." My silence made them impatient. "Sophia, don't be dumb. You've waited for this man for years. Say yes already. You won't find someone better than Erickson even with the flashlight." Flashlight? Try floodlight. And even then, I wouldn't find anyone worse than him. I closed my eyes, images of my past life flashing behind my lids, the betrayal, the cruelty, the pain of having my baby stolen and replaced, and the final moment when Eric stood over the pit and said coldly, "You got my name. What more do you want?" before shoveling dirt over me. And now he was back with that same fake look of affection?
Yeah? No.
I looked him dead in the eyes and said, clear and firm, "No. Erickson, we're done." You could hear a pin drop. The whisper stopped. The smugness slid off his face like melting wax. "Sophia, what are you saying?" he snapped, the cracks in his performance showing. "We've been together for 3 years. You said yesterday you'd marry me." I raised my eyebrow. "That was yesterday. Today's a new day, and guess what? I don't love you anymore. You can go marry anyone you want, just don't come to me." Jasmine gasped like a fish out of water and screamed, "You've been cheating, haven't you? You slut. My brother's so loyal and you treat him like this? You've got no shame." Her voice echoed through the square, half the villagers now looking at me like I had 2 heads. Eric turned on the pity, putting on his best wounded puppy look. "Sophia, I don't care about whatever happened.
I'll still marry you."
"I want to prove that I'm your best option." Oh, so now he was playing the martyr? I almost laughed. "You want to prove it?" I scoffed. "You give Jasmine everything: gold, clothes, special treatment, while I get a handful of weeds and a promise? When you took me to the countryside to protect me, you really meant to sneak around with Jasmine behind my back. I worked every night, broke my back for you, and you couldn't even buy me a decent pair of shoes. But you poured all your savings into Jasmine's college fund. You want me to marry that version of you? Not in this lifetime." He still wouldn't quit. "Why are you jealous of your sister-in-law?" he barked, like I was being irrational. "She's my sister. If I don't take care of her, who will?" I was done playing polite. "If you love her that much, then marry her. You're already acting like husband and wife anyway." That set him off. His face twisted with rage, and before I could brace myself, he slapped me. The entire courtyard froze. The sting burned across my cheek, metallic and hot. I stared at him in disbelief, but not for long. I raised my hand and hit him back hard. Gasps echoed around us. Jasmine shrieked and lunged at me like a banshee, but I just stood still and stared her down. You really want to do this? I asked coldly. Her hand froze in midair. Then, like the drama queen she was, she clutched her stomach and cried, I can't live like this. I'll jump into the river if you all hate me so much, and bolted out the door. Eric panicked and chased her like a trained mutt, but not before turning back to snarl, Sophia, who else would marry you if not me? I turned my back to them, walked straight to the office of the local leader, and said clearly, I want to volunteer for the Educated Youth Countryside program. Please approve my transfer. The leader was surprised. You used your personal favor to get Eric back to the city, and now you want to go to the countryside yourself? Are you sure? You won't be able to come back easily. I nodded. I'm sure. I'd rather suffer in the fields than live one more day around those two. That night, as I returned home, the street was already dark, but I could see Eric pacing outside my door like a stray dog. The minute he spotted me, he rushed up with a syrupy voice. Sophia, baby, don't be mad. I lost my temper. I love you, I really do. I yanked my hand away. I made it clear this afternoon. We're done. Don't follow me again. His face darkened. You promised to marry me. I won't let you back out now. He pushed me inside and tried to pin me against the wall, whispering things I didn't want to hear. You've been mine for years. Everyone knows it. Who would want you now, huh? I shoved him, but he grabbed me harder. His hands started roaming. Panic flared in my chest. That's when I had a flash of inspiration.
Fine, he whispered.
I'll marry you, but only if you swear to be loyal.
Just me.
No one else. His grip loosened. He smirked.
See?
I knew you were just jealous. You're my wife, Sophia. I'll take good care of you. Just then, footsteps approached and dogs barked outside. Eric pulled back. I'll pick you up on the wedding day, he said smugly. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because he just walked into his own trap. And I was the one who dug it. The day of the so-called wedding came faster than I expected, and the entire village buzzed like it was preparing for a royal event. Eric Chin strutted down the road in a brand new suit I paid for, riding the 28-bar bicycle I bought him with my own money, acting like some kind of Prince Charming coming to claim his bride. And clinging to his arm, barely hiding her swollen belly beneath a faded floral dress, was Jasmine Chin, face sourer than vinegar and eyes practically throwing knives at me the moment she saw me standing there with my suitcase packed. It was almost comedic. Who was the one threatening to jump into a river a few days ago? And now she dared to walk up like she owned the place, sneering, Look who decided to show up. You're acting so important for someone who got dumped. If it were me, I'd have died of embarrassment by now. Eric gave her a half-hearted scolding, trying to play both sides like always, then turned to me with fake gentleness dripping off his every word. Sophia, I'm here to take you home. Come with me, let's make our family whole again. I didn't even flinch. Who said I was marrying you? His face went stiff, as if I'd just slapped him again. You promised, he said through gritted teeth. I picked up my suitcase slowly, looked him dead in the eye, and replied calmly, This wedding isn't for me. That was when Jasmine's panic kicked in. Her pale face turned green as she hunched over and gagged, forcing out a couple of dry heaves like she was auditioning for a daytime soap opera. Don't play games, Sophia, she snapped, charging forward to knock my bag off the box. My carefully packed belongings scattered all over the dusty ground, but I didn't panic. I just waited. And sure enough, Eric's eyes landed on a particular document that fluttered out a transfer approval for me to join the Educated Youth program in the countryside. His entire body tensed as he picked it up. What the hell is this? His voice was trembling now, like a volcano seconds before eruption. You're leaving? Why didn't I know about this? His hand clamped around my wrist so tightly that red marks bloomed across my skin. You said you'd marry me. Why would you sign this? I jerked free and stared at the bruises forming. Let go of me. His expression twisted into something desperate and pathetic. I didn't mean to hurt you, he mumbled, quickly brushing his hand through his hair. It was just. I panicked. Why would you leave me? Oh, the acting. He should have been on stage, not in my face. Because marrying you would be the biggest mistake of my life, I said, voice razor sharp. I'd rather go barefoot in the rice fields than wear a veil for a liar like you. The villagers started to whisper again, murmuring about the chaos and how I'd clearly turned him down. Some even stepped in, trying to pull Eric away gently, saying, "Come on, man. She rejected you."
Twice.
A melon forced off the vine is never sweet. But Eric wasn't done humiliating himself. "You all think she's innocent," he roared. "She's been my woman for years. We've done everything. You think someone else would want her now?" That sent the gossip into overdrive. A few even claimed they'd seen me with him late at night, implying all sorts of nasty things. I stood my ground, refusing to flinch, while Eric puffed out his chest like he'd just won an argument. Jasmine, of course, couldn't resist getting in on the action. She snatched my suitcase and dumped the rest of my things onto the dirt. "So poor," she sneered. "This is what you call a dowry? Pathetic." Then she spotted the small cloth-wrapped jade bracelet my mom left me before she passed away and slipped it onto her wrist like it belonged to her. That was my breaking point. "Give it back," I snapped, voice cold and deadly. "That's my mother's." Jasmine laughed and kept walking. Someone shoved me in the chaos I didn't even see, when I hit the ground hard, my palm scraping against a rock. The pain shot up my arm, but I didn't let a single tear fall. I looked up at her, and something inside me finally snapped into place. The fire in my chest wasn't just rage, Anna Marie, it was power. Jasmine noticed it too, because her smirk faltered. "You dare challenge me?" she hissed, just as she raised her hand to strike. But before she could land a hit, her face went pale and she clutched her stomach, gagging uncontrollably.
Oof. Ow.
My stomach. "It hurts," she cried out dramatically, collapsing in the dirt and screaming like she was dying. The crowd gasped. An old woman nearby narrowed her eyes and muttered, "That's exactly how my daughter acted when she was pregnant." And just like that, the entire crowd turned. Eric's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" he shouted at the old lady. "That's nonsense." But it was too late. Everyone had already caught on. The whispers grew louder. "Didn't they say she didn't even have a boyfriend? Whose baby is it? Wasn't she calling herself a virgin last week?" Jasmine tried to cover it up, stammering that she was just feeling sick and that it wasn't what it looked like. But her face was the color of chalk, and she could barely sit up. A local doctor finally pushed through the crowd and checked her pulse. "Relax," he said after a minute. "It's just some herbs that triggered a reaction. Both mother and baby are fine." The crowd exploded. "She really is pregnant?" But she said, "Wasn't she Eric's sister?" Eric tried to save face. "So, what if she's pregnant? We're not blood related. Jasmine's just adopted. There's nothing wrong with this." But it was like watching a man drown while insisting the water was clean. "You're disgusting," someone muttered. "You knocked up your own sister before you even married your fiancé?" Another spat. "No wonder Sophia's leaving. Who'd want to stay with a guy like that?" I took a deep breath and decided to hit where it hurt. "Eric," I said loud enough for the whole crowd to hear, "we were together for 3 years. And this is how you repay me? You betrayed me and now want me to play second wife while Jasmine gets the baby and the house? Take your trash and get out of my life." He looked like he wanted to argue, but the shame was finally settling into his bones. He mumbled something about me regretting this one day and staggered back, grabbing Jasmine, who was still dramatically sobbing on the ground. I watched them go with no emotion. I had planted the pills that caused her to vomit in the first place. The same pills she once made me take, pretending they were for my anxiety. They thought I'd stay dumb forever.
Not this time.
That afternoon, I boarded the truck that would take me to the countryside. As we drove off, the wind cool on my face, I felt lighter than I had in years. No more lies. No more manipulation. Just me, my new path, and the fire burning in my chest for something better. When I first stepped foot in the countryside, I wasn't expecting any kind of welcome, but to my surprise, the village chief and a couple of local cadres came out to greet me like I was some kind of hero. "No one's ever volunteered to come here before," they said with genuine smiles and weathered faces. Our place is too remote, but the kids have been waiting for a teacher for so long. Comrade Sophia, it's a blessing to have someone like you. I smiled politely, my heart not quite ready to let its guard down, but something about their sincerity, how raw and uncomplicated it was, chipped away at the wall I'd built. Compared to the betrayal and filth I'd just escaped, this kind of hardship felt like paradise. No hidden knives, no fake smiles, no one trying to steal my life from under me. Just calloused hands, dirt roads, and honest work. So I threw myself into it. I started organizing classes, recruited villagers who had any schooling at all to help me build a school from scratch, and even open a night class for adults who couldn't read or write. I was up before the sun and asleep long after the stars had faded, pouring my entire soul into this dusty little corner of the world. Every child who picked up a pencil because of me, every grandmother who could finally read her family's letters, I counted each one like a victory. I didn't have fancy clothes or a warm bed, but for the first time in both my lives, I felt free. Then came the news. I'd been secretly praying for the reinstatement of the college entrance exam. I didn't scream or cry when I heard it. I just locked myself in the tiny mud-walled classroom I called my home and buried myself in books I'd hidden away like treasure.
For 2 years, I prepared.
2 years of sweat and grit and determination, all for one shot to take back the future I gave up for a man who buried me alive. On exam day, I took the first bus to the city and walked into that testing center like I owned the place. My heart didn't flutter. My hands didn't shake. I sat down, flipped open the paper, and started writing as if my life depended on it, because it did. When the final bell rang, I stood up with a calm kind of pride and walked out of the exam room, ready to start the next chapter. But the universe, apparently, wasn't done messing with me yet. Because the moment I stepped outside, there he was, Eric Chin. He looked like a shell of the man who used to strut around with that smug grin. His hair was streaked with gray, and his back was slightly hunched. The years hadn't been kind to him, and honestly, I was glad. He rushed toward me, eyes lighting up like he'd seen salvation, and whispered, "Sophia, I knew you'd come. I've been waiting for you for so long." I stared at him, my entire body going cold, and sidestepped without hesitation.
Move.
Good dogs don't block the road. His expression didn't even flinch at the insult, was too far gone. "You're still mad, aren't you? Look, I had no choice. I only married Jasmine because you left. You were the one I always wanted." I actually laughed. The child you made me raise? The university you stole from me? The fake amnesia? That was love. His face crumpled, but I didn't wait for him to respond. "I don't care about your excuses. I'm free now. So, get out of my way." He took a step back, but didn't give up. "I was just checking on your exam. I wanted to support you." I narrowed my eyes. "Your support makes me nauseous. Do me a favor, disappear." I turned, ready to put him behind me forever, when a shrill scream tore through the air. "You whore." I ducked just in time to dodge a wild swing. It was Jasmine, except now she looked like a wild animal. Her hair was a tangled mess, her clothes were filthy, and her eyes. God, her eyes were cracked glass. "You seduced my husband. I knew it. You came back to steal him," she shrieked, flailing her arms like a madwoman. "Why didn't you die in the ravine? Why are you still alive?" I didn't even flinch. "Girl, the only person treating Eric like a prize is you. I wouldn't take him back if he came with a winning lottery ticket stapled to his forehead." Jasmine didn't hear a word. She kept screaming, dragging Eric into her frenzy. "You ungrateful bastard. You killed my baby, and now you're back with her?" Before I could even blink, Eric slapped her so hard she hit the ground. "Shut up," he yelled, eyes twitching with rage. "Don't embarrass me here." She curled into a sobbing heap, grabbing at his pant leg, begging, "Please don't leave me. I have nothing left." A nearby security guard finally showed up, stick in hand. "What's going on here? No begging allowed. Get out of here before I call the cops." Jasmine looked so wrecked and pitiful that she barely resembled the smug little monster who once stole my bracelet. Eric tried to play the calm husband role, but even the security guy was sick of it. They were both dragged away, her screaming, him shouting. "I passed the exam. I'm a college student. Sophia, I got rid of Jasmine. Can we start over?" That was the last straw. I stepped back, absolutely done with this circus. I didn't even need to respond because the guard stared at Eric like he was insane and said, "Get him out of here." He just confessed to something serious. Later, I heard from a neighbor that Eric had been arrested. The fire Jasmine started in her mental breakdown took out the entire house. She didn't survive. And Eric? He was sentenced to death for arson and murder. I found out when I saw it in the paper, folded it up, and went straight back to the library without a single word. I didn't need closure. I didn't need revenge anymore. They got what they deserved, and I got my life back. Tomorrow, I'd start university. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in a dorm room in the capital, not a dirt floor. Tomorrow, I'd be just another student in the crowd. But today, I finally stopped carrying their names in my story. Campus life was everything I had dreamed of during those long nights in the countryside, surrounded by the hum of crickets and the scent of damp soil. But unlike the fantasies I used to cling to, it wasn't glamorous or romantic, it was real, and that made it perfect. I shared a dorm with 3 other girls who were mostly city-born, curious about my background, surprised that someone who taught rural kids algebra by lantern light could outscore half the capital. I didn't flaunt my story, but I didn't hide it either. I studied hard, showed up early, and earned my spot in every way. For once, my identity wasn't tied to anyone else. Not to Eric, not to Jasmine, not even to the pain they caused. I was just Sophia Lynn now, student ID number 54321, majoring in education with a stubborn streak and a reputation for being fiercely independent. But even freedom had its ghosts. One afternoon, just after I had registered for classes and met my new professors, someone from the administration pulled me aside. "There's a family member waiting for you at the gate," he said. I froze. No one in my family knew where I was, not even my distant cousins. I walked out slowly, heart thudding, and the moment I saw the tattered figure arguing with the security guard at the campus gate, I knew the past hadn't died just yet. Eric Chin was back, looking like a man who had crawled out of the ruins of his own disaster. His clothes were washed so many times they were practically transparent, and the suitcase he clutched looked older than I was. "Sophia," he shouted, his voice cracking with a kind of hope that made my stomach churn. "I finally found you. I passed the exam. I am going to college, too. Isn't that great? We can be together again." The security guard rolled his eyes, already irritated. "Sir, you don't have an admission letter. You can't enter the premises." I stepped forward and gave Eric a look colder than the wind off the North Mountain. "Are you insane? You think you can just show up here and start over like nothing happened?" He flinched but didn't move. "Jasmine's gone," he said quietly, almost reverently, like it was a sacrifice. "She's out of the picture. It's just you and me now. Please, Sophia, forgive me." I stared at him in disbelief, remembering the charred remains of the house he and Jasmine had burned down with their twisted love. She'd lost her mind before the fire, and he'd lost his soul long before that. "I don't care what you've lost," I said, voice low and sharp. "My home has never included you." Something in him broke at those words. He dropped to his knees right there in front of everyone, holding onto my pant leg like a beggar. "I was wrong. I should have cherished you. I was blind. Please, Sophia, let's start over. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me again." His sobs were loud and unrestrained, but they didn't move me. Not even a flicker of pity. The security guard looked at me, unsure of what to do. I turned to him calmly. "He doesn't belong here. Please remove him from campus." The guard didn't hesitate. 2 other staff members came over and dragged Eric away as he screamed like a madman, "I passed the exam. I got rid of her for you, Sophia. Why won't you forgive me?" The moment he said that, everything stopped. Even the security guard blinked in shock. I didn't say a word. I just watched as they dragged him off to the police. I never saw him again until the newspaper headline screamed his fate. Eric Chin sentenced to death for arson and murder. Turns out he confessed during the interrogation, admitted to locking Jasmine inside before setting the fire, all because he believed getting rid of her would win me back. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anything at all. I folded the paper neatly, slipped it into a drawer, and went on with my day. There was a class on child development I didn't want to miss. Still, people talked. Word got around about the man who came begging and ended up on death row. Some of my classmates whispered about it in the halls. Others tried to ask me directly. I never answered. I didn't owe them anything. The only thing I focused on was the future. And yet, one night, as I sat in my dorm organizing my notes, a neighbor from the countryside came to visit and dropped a box of fresh fruit in my lap like a peace offering. She leaned in and whispered, "Good thing you left when you did. Eric and Jasmine's mess exploded after you were gone." I pretended to be indifferent, but she continued, "They got married after you left openly, shamelessly. The whole village was disgusted, but they didn't care. Eric lost his job soon after because of a bad work ethic. He was demoted, paid less than a field hand. Jasmine still acted like she was the queen of the world, demanding gifts, clothes, attention. But Eric couldn't keep up. She caught him hiding your old photos. That's when all hell broke loose. They fought like animals, broke everything in the house, and Jasmine miscarried from the stress. The baby was never born. That's when she really lost it. Started talking to walls, accusing ghosts of betrayal. The fire happened not long after that. I nodded silently. It made sense. That chilled Derek and Jasmine's precious son, the one they forced me to raise in my past life, who treated me like a servant, who spat at me and said I didn't belong because I didn't share his name. He never even existed in this life. And I didn't miss him. Not even a little. My visitor sighed and said something about karma and fate, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was thinking about how I'd never have to face that boy's cold eyes again. How I'd never be called an outsider in my own home. The miscarriage, the madness, the fire, it was all part of the cleansing. The universe had taken back everything it once used to torture me. And now I could finally breathe. I never visited their graves. I never lit incense or offered prayers. I left it all behind. Because my story wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about reclaiming what was stolen from me. It was about rewriting my ending. And I had no intention of slowing down. Time passed quickly once I stopped looking over my shoulder, and before I knew it, my second year of college was already halfway through. I didn't just survive, I thrived. I volunteered at the campus literacy program, helped translate rural education materials, and even got selected for a national scholarship for returning youth contributors. Professors who once glanced at me like I didn't belong now called on me first in class. My name slowly became known, not because of any drama or sob story, but because of what I built with my own two hands. I'd finally stepped out of the shadow of Sophia the martyr and into the light of Sophia the scholar. But life, as always, had its own messed-up sense of humor. I was just coming back from class when the school gate's security guard waved me over with a complicated expression. "Someone's looking for you again," he muttered, half annoyed and half sympathetic. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean again?" I asked, already bracing for the worst. And there he was, Eric Chun in the flesh, standing just outside the campus gates like he belonged here. I blinked. No, it couldn't be. Hadn't he already been sentenced? But then I noticed his posture, his bloodshot eyes, the way he was pacing like a stray mutt begging to be let back into a warm home he'd burned down. "Thingy," he yelled my name like it was still his to call. "I found you again. I've been waiting outside the dorms for days. Please just hear me out." I backed up instinctively, clutching my books tighter. "You shouldn't be here," I said, my voice ice cold. "You're not part of my world anymore." I made that clear. But he just stepped closer, desperation oozing from every word. "Jasmine is dead. The house is gone. I've lost everything. You're the only one left. Please, Sophia, just give me a chance." I almost laughed. "You think being alone gives you the right to show up and rewrite the past? You murdered her. You buried me in our last life. And you think this one is a second shot for you?" He looked genuinely shocked that I wasn't melting with pity. I was wrong, okay? I was young, I was stupid. But I've changed. I even passed the college entrance exam. We can go to school together, start over. My jaw tightened. "You passed the exam?" I repeated. "Show me the letter." His eyes flicked away for a moment.
I
"Lost it," he mumbled. The security guard stepped in, now fully irritated. "Sir, we've warned you before. This is a private campus. You either show proof of admission or leave immediately." Eric tried to beg again, but this time the guard didn't hesitate. Two other staff came and dragged him away as he screamed, "She's mine. She promised me. We were supposed to be together." His voice faded into the background like a bad dream, and I turned around without another word, ignoring the stares from students nearby who had no idea what kind of hell that man had dragged me through. That night, I sat in my dorm room, reading through my notes, trying to act like it didn't bother me, but I knew this wasn't the last time. I wasn't scared anymore, but part of me wished the past would just stay buried where it belonged. Unfortunately, karma didn't have a schedule. It just showed up when it felt like wrecking your peace. A week later, while I was studying in the campus library, one of my classmates nudged me and whispered, "There's a guy at the gate again," screaming something about how he passed the exam and was betrayed by the school system. Security's called the police. I didn't even look up. I didn't need to. I already knew. And sure enough, by the end of the day, the news broke. Eric Shen had been officially detained after trespassing and causing a public disturbance. This time, he hadn't just ranted about Skull, had screamed that he'd already handled Jasmine and that Sophia was next. The whole campus was shaken. The dean called me into her office, not because she blamed me, but because the authorities needed context. I explained everything: our past, the abuse, the betrayal, the faked amnesia, the fire, Jasmine's breakdown, the death sentence. They were shocked I'd stayed so composed. "You never reported this?" they asked. I just smiled. He's already been judged by the law once. I didn't expect him to crawl back out of hell. But apparently, Eric's sentence had been commuted due to some legal technicality. He wasn't supposed to be free, but somewhere between paperwork and parole boards, he slipped through. And, of course, his first thought was to come find me. Because narcissists never believe they've lost. They just think the game's still going. That night, I filed a restraining order.
It was approved the same day.
The next morning, Eric was transferred to a psychological holding facility after another outburst near the campus perimeter. He wouldn't be coming back. Not without a straitjacket. And just like that, it was over.
For real this time.
I stood by the window of the dorm, watching the students laugh and chatter under the cherry blossoms, wondering how I'd made it this far without losing my mind. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was rebuilding. And now that the storm was over, the road ahead looked clear. Still, something tugged at Mesomething unresolved. Because even though I had left them behind, they hadn't left me. Not completely. That's when I realized it wasn't enough to erase Eric and Jasmine. I needed to fill that space with something better. Something mine. I started drafting an education proposal based on my 2 years teaching in the countryside. It was messy at first, notes scribbled between classes, research jammed between study groups, and scholarship deadlines, but it grew into something real. I presented it at a youth education forum a month later, and, to my surprise, it won first place. The prize wasn't just money, it came with an internship at the Ministry of Education and a mentorship from a top-tier professor. Suddenly, I wasn't just a student anymore, I was a rising name in national education reform. My classmates started treating me differently. Not like a survivor, but like a leader. And I liked that. It was the first time I felt like the Sophia I was always meant to be. The girl who could dream big, not just escape nightmares. And deep down, I knew I wasn't doing this just for me. I was doing it for every version of me that had been silenced, every girl who'd been told to stay, to forgive, to endure. I wasn't just moving forward, I was dragging the entire legacy of my pain with me and reshaping it into something powerful.
Something permanent.
And I wasn't done yet. The funny thing about survival is that people think it ends once you're safe, like reaching the shore after a storm means you're dry and warm and whole again, but that's not how it works. Not really. Healing isn't a destination, it's a habit you build day by day. And for me, that habit looked a lot like showing up to class early, leading discussions, applying for every single opportunity one could find, and refusing to let the girl who once begged for love at someone else's feet be the last version of myself I ever knew. So by the time I stood on that university stage, diploma in hand, graduation cap barely clinging to my hair, I wasn't thinking about Eric or Jasmine or even the years I lost. I was thinking about the next step, about how I'd already been offered a full scholarship for graduate school in Beijing, and how the Ministry of Education wanted to bring my rural initiative into 10 more provinces. I was thinking about the teacher I'd become, the mentor I'd had, the students who wrote me letters with crooked handwriting and big dreams. I was thinking about how I used to cry myself to sleep in a wooden cot with a dirt floor beneath me, and now I was being invited to speak on national radio about rural female literacy. And still, There were days when I'd wake up and my first thought would be panic, wondering if I'd made a mistake, if I'd left something unfinished, if the past would claw its way back again. But it never did, not in the way I feared, because even when a journalist showed up one day, eager to write a feature about my rise from tragedy, waving old court records and newspaper headlines about Eric Chen's trial, I didn't feel exposed or broken. I felt unbothered, like hearing about someone else's life I used to pass in the hallway. So I politely declined the interview and returned to my lecture notes, not because I was hiding anything, but because the most important story I had to tell wasn't about how I was betrayed, it was about how I rewrote the ending. Still, curiosity had a way of finding me, like the old woman from the village who mailed me a letter wrapped in newsprint. Inside was a picture of my old classroom in the countryside, now repainted and renamed the Sophia Lynn Rural Learning Center. Apparently the children still remembered me, still mentioned how I taught them letters using corn kernels and scratched multiplication tables in the dirt. It made me cry, not because I was sad, but because I had finally become someone worth remembering, someone who mattered, not because of the pain I survived, but because of the hope I passed on. And then there was the day, years later, when I returned to that village during my doctoral fieldwork, stepping off the bus to find new faces, better roads, and kids in uniforms chasing each other around the schoolyard. I didn't expect anyone to recognize me, but one of the older women gasped and shouted, "Teacher Sophia." Before pulling me into a hug that smelled like ginger and rain-soaked soil, they invited me to dinner, poured me homemade wine, and told me stories I'd forgotten about myself, like the time I walked miles to get new chalk or stayed up 3 nights helping a boy with a stutter memorize his poems. And in that moment, I realized I had finally made peace with the version of me who once left here in the back of a truck, clutching a bruised heart and a suitcase full of dreams no one believed in but me. And when I returned to Beijing, I brought with me something more valuable than data or research. I brought proof that second chances aren't something you wait for. They're something you claim, teeth bared, hands shaking, knees bloody, and chest open, even if it means losing everything first. I carried that proof with me through every classroom I stepped into, every policy proposal I defended, every young woman I mentored who looked at me with that same quiet ache in her eyes, and I told them, never out loud, but always through the way I lived, that you don't need anyone's permission to begin again. Not after betrayal, not after heartbreak, not after being buried alive by the people you trusted most. You just need to choose yourself and do it over and over, until the world has no choice but to follow. And maybe that's what justice really looks like, not a courtroom or a headline or even a prison sentence, but a woman who was once written off becoming the author of her own legacy. Because when I stood under that stage light at the International Education Summit, watching the crowd rise in applause after my speech on equity in rural schooling, I didn't think about Eric begging outside that campus gate, or Jasmine screaming through her tears, or the way they looked at me like I was nothing. I thought about my mother's jade bracelet, long gone but never forgotten, and how I wore it once like a promise, not to them, but to myself, that I would never, ever let anyone steal my name, my light, or my future again. And as the lights dimmed and I stepped down to shake hands with foreign dignitaries and education officials, one of them smiled and said, "Your journey is remarkable. You should write a memoir." I just smiled back and said, "Maybe someday." Because I knew that while some stories end with a period, mine was still going, still rising, still being written with every breath I took. And this time, the pen was mine.